Today we're going to be talking about rotations. So a rotation is the turning of a geometric figure. For our problems, assume the figure is rotating around the origin. So remember, clockwise, you're rotating the figure to the right. Counterclockwise, you're rotating the figure to the left. Rotations are given in degrees: 90 degrees, 180, 270, and 360. So if you rotate 90 degrees, your figure is going to move one quadrant to either the right or the left, depending on if it's clockwise or counterclockwise. 180 degrees, you're going to move 2 quadrants. 270 degrees, you're going to move 3 quadrants. Again, dependent on, it's going to be right or left, dependent on if you're doing clockwise or counterclockwise. And a 360 is going to be 4 quadrants. And you need to know your integer signs for each quadrant. So for example, in quadrant 1, because you go right and then up, it's going to be your x value is positive and your y value is positive. In quadrant 2, because you go left, your x is negative, and then up, your y is positive. In quadrant 3, you're going left, so your x is negative, and then down, so your y is negative. And then in quadrant 4, you're going right, so your x is positive, then you're going down, so your y is negative. This will help you get your answer each time. So looking below, for every 90-degree rotation, turn the order of the numbers in the ordered pair. And then step 2, you want to change the signs of the numbers to match the quadrant or location of the figure after your rotation. So for your 90 degrees and your 270 degrees, your numbers in your ordered pair should be switched. However, in 180 and 360, because you're flipping the numbers twice, so for example, if you have the order pair 3, 4 for the original, and then if I flip it 90 degrees, I'm going to rotate the numbers, and then at 180 degrees, I'm flipping the numbers again, which are back at the original order. And then at 270 degrees, you're flipping your numbers again. So the order is the same for the original, the 180, and the 360. However, if you rotate 90 degrees or 270, your numbers will be flipped. So let's look at an actual example. So here we have our original figure. Okay, A is at -1, -1. B is at -2, -3. C is at -1, -5. D is at -3, -3. So if I do this at a 90 degrees, let's say 90 degrees clockwise. So we'll do clockwise. So you're going to flip your numbers every 90 degrees that you go. So for example, -1, -1. So you have the ones will switch, which you can't see because they're the same number. And if you go clockwise, you're going to end up in quadrant 2. The signs in quadrant 2 are negative, positive. For B, rotate your numbers to be 3, 2. You're in the second quadrant, so you should have -3, +2. For C, be 5, 1. And again, you'll end up in the second quadrant, so it's -5, 1. And for D, you'll end up with -3, 3. So let's plot these. And don't forget when you do these will have 1 tick mark for prime. Now let's look at 180 degrees. You're going to flip your numbers again. So I'm going to have a 1 and a 1. And you're going to end up in the first quadrant where all signs are positive. So I'm going to rotate. This will be 2, 3, 1, 5, and 3, 3. So now let's plot these. Now let's look at 270 degrees. So you're going to flip your numbers again. And if I'm going 270, that is going to put me in the fourth quadrant, because I've started here at the original and I've rotated 90, 180, 270 clockwise. The fourth quadrant is a positive, negative for my signs. So it's going to be 1, -1. We're going to go through and do that for all of these. Flip. And then your signs will be positive, negative. Change the order. Your signs will be positive, negative. Change the order. Sign order will be positive, negative. So plot. Make sure you have the appropriate amount of apostrophes for each turn. So for example, 270 degrees, that is my third figure that I've put on the graph, so you should have 3 apostrophes. And once you float back to the original problem, so 360, that's going to put you back in the third quadrant where all your signs are negative, which is the same as the original. One thing that you'll have to pay attention to, you notice this figure here, the original, starts all the points are in quadrant 3. You'll have to be careful if one of the points or more than one is in a different quadrant. That is okay, but you need to adapt your signs appropriately. Turn the page. So here's just another reminder. So rotations, where you're turning the figure, if you move it 1 quadrant, that means you're moving 90 degrees. If you move 2 quadrants, that means you're moving 180. 3 quadrants is 270. 4 quadrants, which is 360, that's the original position. Clockwise is where you're turning it right. Counterclockwise is where you're turning it left. The rules, 90 or 270 degrees, switches the order of the quadrants. The signs will depend on what quadrant you land in. If you rotate 180, this is going to keep your coordinates the same, but again, the signs depend on the quadrant. So the signs for a 180 degree rotation, the signs should be opposite. Okay, so for our example up top, here's our original figure. So this is going to be original or a 360 degree rotation. If I rotate it to the fourth quadrant, this is either going to be a 90 degree rotation clockwise or a 270 degree counterclockwise. If I end up in the third quadrant, that is going to be a 180 degrees rotation, whether you go clockwise or counterclockwise. And if I end up in the second quadrant, this is going to be either a 90 degree counterclockwise or a 270 degree clockwise. So let's try the example to the right. Actually, pause the video and you try the example to the right, both the rotation of 90 degree clockwise and the 180 degree counterclockwise. Check your answers with the following problems. Remember your rules. For every 90 degrees, you're flipping your numbers. Okay, so in the first example, you should have rotated your numbers, the order, and then you adapt your signs to the quadrant you're in. You're in quadrant 1, so all your signs should be positive for your 90 degree clockwise rotation. In the second example, 180, your numbers will stay in the same order, but then you adapt your signs for the quadrant you're in. You're in quadrant 4, so your x's are all positive, your y's are all negative. Ask your teacher if you have any questions.